Promo Insiders, the ASI Media podcast that covers the issues that matter most to the promotional products industry. I'm Teresa Hegel, Executive Editor for Digital Content at ASI, and today I'm speaking with Eric Henry, President of TS Designs, a North Carolina screen printing company with a focus on U.S. manufacturing and sustainable, transparent supply chains. Thanks for joining us today, Eric.
I'm glad to be here.
So, you've been in the apparel business for a pretty long time. Um, can you tell me a little bit about how your business has sort of evolved through the years and sort of where this focus on, people, planet, and like sustainability, where did this kind of start for you?
Sure. To be exact, I've actually been in the industry now for 44 years. Started while I was at NC State in 1978. But what got me to our vision of a triple bottom line really kind of goes back to a couple of things in my life. First of all, connecting with my grandfather when I was growing up, and he got me into backyard gardening. And so back in the, say, late 60s, early 70s, it was organic by default. So I learned about all, how plants work together and systems and all that type of stuff. So that gave me a connection to the environment. I guess you say I've been a tree hugger most of my life. Again, started my business at NC State in 78, grew that with my partner, Tom Siney, to a large contract screen printer, working for the brands. And then it was NAFTA in 1994 that pretty much destroyed all that business. All the brands quickly moved overseas. And then the race to the cheapest price became the focus, and neglecting people and planet. So having our business destroyed and having that basis of care for the environment and care for people, we quickly rallied around the idea of a triple bottom line and adopted that in the mid 90s. Now people call it triple bottom line, sustainable business model, became the first certified B Corp. And it's just part of our DNA now. And I think it's more important than ever that we have this, because as I've been saying lately, as I've been touring the college campus and talking to a lot of students, is we live in a time where single bottom line commerce is outpacing any rules and regulations. So it's really getting to the consumer to be aware to help make the right decisions, because the regulations aren't in place. I mean, we're seeing that with our fast fashion issues with Shein and Temu. And again, I have no problem with global competition. What I have a problem with is basically competing on a level playing field. And with the introduction of fast fashion, now we have things that we basically banned from our environment, i.e. lead, certain dyes and stuff like that, are now coming back in because we don't have those guardrails to keep it from doing that. So it's been a journey, and I think the journey is more important than ever, that we look beyond just the price and ask the question, where it's made, how it's made, and what's the social environmental impact of that purchase.
Yeah. And I know you guys have done some really cool things just like over the years, such as like the Wear Your Clothing initiative and like dirt to shirt supply chains and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about some of these initiatives that you've started regarding apparel and transparent supply chains?
Sure. What I like to say too is, our best customer, educated customers. So how do we get information to our customers' hand so they can make those better decisions? So you rattled a couple of our taglines, brands, whatever. One thing that we did, and it was interesting because it was picked up in Vogue. Somebody, a writer for Vogue magazine, was talking about using ingredient label on apparel to identify where they're made and how they're made.
Sort of like a food label.
Exactly, agree. And we developed what we call our clothing facts label back in I think was it 2007. And again, that same purpose is, we need to, how do we distinguish what we're doing different than what's on the market? So that's how the clothing caps, give that information of where it's made and how it's made. So we developed that in 2007. Then we developed what we call the Cotton of Carolinas brand, which is our dirt to shirt in the Carolinas, 700 miles in a completely transparent supply chain, which then spun off Wear Your Clothing. That is WHERE, yourclothing.com. And that basically is just a website that gives us transparency of our supply chain. Again, something that's it's very, very hard to find in our industry. Now we just get made in whatever country, which is pretty much meaningless information. So we developed that. During COVID, we launched Solid State Clothing, which is our direct-to-consumer brand. That way we can connect direct to the consumer with our ideas of natural fibers and natural dyes. And then also during COVID, we started doing a lot of stuff with natural dyes. And then I think that's what's part of this conversation spun off our latest venture, which is Know Your Clothing, which is going to be a nonprofit part to continue to fund the R&D that we've been doing at TS Design since the mid-90s.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit more about like the natural dyes. So I know in the general apparel, like fashion industry, the dyes are they're pretty bad, right? Like what are the issues with how things are sort of made right now as far as dyes go?
Well, as the industries evolve, pretty much synthetic dyes are the predominant way to dye apparel, and still it's the predominant way we dye our t-shirts. Man, we use a reactive dye on cotton fabrics. So I mean, and I always like to say, sustainability is a journey, not a destination. So it is where we are. So that's what we, said, well, how can we start identifying and commercializing natural dyes? But back to synthetics, and I think the issues with synthetic dyes will be the issue of, like we're talking about microplastics now, we'll realize where we've gotten ourselves, which is they're pretty much all imported. So we know what happens to global supply chains during global disruption, not able to get them. They're pretty much all gone overseas because it's a nasty industry to be in. And, we got that out of our backyard and put some in our backyard. And on top of all that, most of them are driven by fossil fuels. So we also know all the issue with fossil fuels. So, we have created this monster, and has not been in our backyard, but now we're realizing how detrimental that is to the environment, to the people. And so that's why, we feel like there's a lot of opportunities in natural dyes that have not been explored yet because it's been considered a very niche sector. And there's issues, consistency, wash fastness, light fastness. While I'm not saying we'll be able to replace all synthetic dyes, I believe there's an opportunity to definitely take a nice chunk out of that and use and be able to produce it with agriculture materials, some from basically agriculture waste, and produce textile dyes here in this country.
So some of the things you guys kind of have experimented with were like black walnut dyes, right?
Yes.
What else have you done as far as natural dyes?
Oh my gosh, there's so many of them. Black walnut is one that we really focus a lot of attention on. Matter of fact, I've got a meeting later today. We're part of a group from the University of Vermont MBA program. They've been working on this about the last 3 months. Because the thing we like about the black walnut, here's a resource, literally billions of pounds fall on the ground, but only millions of pounds are being utilized. So now we got this basically resource. So what do we do to incentivize people to collect it? And then the black walnut, we're just using the outside husk. There's a lot of other parts of that black walnut that can be used for other areas, including the nut itself. So that's what really interests that. But in addition to black walnut, we did a marigold project, and that ended up being our state magazine style product of the year in 2023. We've done stuff with avocado pits, working with somebody in Europe to develop dyes from spent coffee grinds. We've done things with black Hopi sunflowers, a purple sweet potato. God, what else have we done? We actually, and then that spun off this year. We installed a dye garden at TS Design, so we can start experimenting with other plant materials and what works and what not. And again, last year we invested in significant equipment to help us identify very quickly what dye materials will work well and can potentially be scaled, and which ones need more work.
Right. Yeah, I think it's so interesting, and some of the colors that these products, become, because of the natural dyes, it's beautiful. Like they don't, sometimes people think like, oh, it's a natural dye, it's going to be like kind of blah, not very
Yeah.
interesting, but they're very rich and interesting colors, to me anyway.
Yes. I mean, a lot of natural dyes in general are going to be, browns and grays and tans and stuff like that. Plenty of things to do that. But we've done some pretty cool, and then you also can combine different materials to develop other colors. We just dropped a color, I think we called it cinnamon, which is a reddish uh, maroon color that is a combination of a couple of different dyes. So, I mean, we're not going to get those bright neon colors and stuff like that, at least as of yet. But I think there's a lot that we can do, and there's a lot of areas that just haven't been explored. And again, that's why we launched our nonprofit to help,
Yeah.
generate more revenue or get more revenue to do more R&D.
So talk a little bit more about Know Your Clothing then. What are the things that you guys, besides like the dyes, what else are you trying to explore and figure out with it?
Well, everything's pretty much centered around natural fibers, natural dyes. So natural fibers, predominantly right now is cotton, but we're very involved with hemp. So some of that R&D will go to how do we utilize hemp as a fiber, and then also hemp leaves as a dye, and how do we combine the two of those? And let me see. God, where I lost my train of thought there, but
Well, I think something else I had seen was like talking about like these sort of like mini manufacturing kind of hubs, sort of like how you have the cotton of the Carolinas, a very small like supply chain, but setting up things like that in other parts of the country.
That's correct. We're part of that R&D. Yes, is the idea we call apparel manufacturing clusters instead of global apparel supply chains, i.e., Cotton of Carolinas is one of those clusters. But we want to enhance that with some other technologies because we feel like this idea of a cluster and utilizing resources in that area that not only can address speed to market, but inventory management, everything too, that we are doing that's just natural fibers, natural dyes in a garment dyed environment. Because again, the big issue that we have in the apparel industry, we make too much stuff. 30% of the apparel that gets made is never sold. And so how do we make it, or how do we use garment dyeing so we can have that speed to market, inventory management? The other thing too we're working on with this is the other big issue in our industry is everybody says, well, we'll just recycle it. Well, if you don't know how it's made or what it's made of, recycling becomes very, very difficult, which the industry is figuring that out. So, there's, again, nothing I can do about what's out there now, but what we're working on with some other companies, again, utilizing natural fibers, natural dyes, and understanding all the materials that go into our t-shirts. We believe, and we are working on how to make the shirt still give the consumer a high quality product that's durable, lasts long, but when it comes to end of life, it's going to be so much easier to break this thing back down to make regenerative cotton fiber.
Yeah. So making the whole process like circular, because where it started, and then when it's at the end, you can kind of bring it back around.
And that's the problem, that's so big buzzword, the circularity, in which we get that. I support it, go with it. But if you don't know the materials that go into the product you're trying to put in a circular economy, unfortunately, a lot of that stuff ends up at the landfill because you don't know what you don't know until you get into the process. That's the big issue with, we put polyester in everything now, and that's only to basically reduce the cost, but also basically instead of putting gas in your tank, we're just putting gas in your shirts. But it ends up causing a much more difficult process to break that down because the polyester is recyclable but not biodegradable, and the cotton's biodegradable but not recyclable. But you got to separate the two of those. So
right. Those blends are so popular, or have been. Yeah.
But hard to break down, and again, not good for the environment.
Yeah. So, I mean, for like people in the promo industry who are trying to kind of maybe steer their clients to more made in the USA apparel, what can they do? How can they accomplish that? Because it could be really hard, I think, to do that because price is still so big and there's not as many like there's some options out there, but there's not as many. Like, so what are some things that maybe people in the promo industry can do to kind of support, made in the USA and sustainability and things like that?
Well, you're exactly right. There, 98% of our clothes are made overseas, so the industry is extremely small. And I think it starts with just being aware. And when you're aware, and then you share the information to other people, and then you come up ways to, it's back to it's a journey, not a destination. And I think, it starts with being aware. And the very thing that we're fortunate with, and matter of fact, last week, I went down, and usually the first week of July, I go down and check on our cotton farm we work with for over 15 years. And they're about, I don't know, 60 miles away. And again, you get an idea what's happening at the cotton farm. And then they're having their challenges too, not only with weather, extremely low commodity cotton prices, the shrinking domestic manufacturing industry. So it's a challenge out there, but I think the main thing they can do, it's not like a switch you're going to turn overnight and so all and do that, but just start having that conversation and finding those customers that are willing to explore. And it's back to journey. Maybe it's, switching to 100% cotton shirt as the first step over a poly cotton shirt. So at least you get the polyester out of it. And the next thing is at least understanding where it's made, the facilities, even if it's overseas somewhere. I would say, where's that product made? And then long term, there are some opportunities to make things in the U.S. and there is capacity there. But the biggest issue at the end of the day, and I like to say a lot of people says, well, your t-shirts cost more. I said, no, it's not our t-shirts cost more. It's what you're usually buying is not priced properly. I.e., as I said earlier, those negative external costs of impact to people and planet are not being recognized in the price.
Yeah.
And we just live in a time that there's no system to do that. Again, but I point back again to the Shimu and Timus. That stuff's cheap to the consumer, but the damage it's doing to people and planet is just not being recognized.
Yeah. And I mean, I think something we've talked about before too is during the pandemic when kind of all these supply chains broke down, you sort of realized how fragile some of these global supply chains actually were. So maybe, you can think about, and we hear more about people trying to like near shore or do different things to try to not have those same issues happen again. Although I don't know if everyone learned that lesson or not, but it does seem like that's something that people should be thinking about because it can just kind of break down very quickly.
Well, I think, I was telling somebody yesterday, the whole nearshoring and reshoring, I've not seen that much of it. There was a lot of conversation during COVID because we understand the global disruption. But I think the 800-pound gorilla in the room is, over the, since NAFTA was passed or started in 1994 or implemented in 1994, is the industry has focused their attention, the resources to overseas manufacturing, and because of that, they have had a windfall of tremendous savings in labor costs, which impacts their bottom line. And so that's a tough thing to give up, and I don't see many brands making that. They might do it for more marketing than it is a commitment. But yeah, exactly right. And I think the global environment for disruption is as volatile as it was during COVID. With the situation in Europe, the situation in Israel, the situation in Taiwan. Wouldn't take much for just this thing to just lock up, and we're going to be back to where we are. And as it says, we just kind of stuck our head in the sands, and we just go back and look at the money in our bank account.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been a really interesting conversation. Do you have any final thoughts that you wanted to share today?
Other than, again, thank you for your interest in reaching out. I think it all starts with just education, being aware. That's where change starts, and it's tough. I feel like we're fighting two battles now. We're fighting the battle of the cheap fast fashion, but then we're also fighting the battle on the other end, the brands that have made a commitment to overseas manufacturing, but they're hearing the consumers say, well, what are you doing about the environment? So we'll do some organic cotton, we'll do some recycled polyester, but that quickly gets us into greenwashing, because they're not telling the whole story. They're just telling the highlight. And again, I'm not saying we're a perfect company. There's always room for improvement, but there's just no secrets. There's no secrets where our product's made. There's no secrets how our product, what the materials are used, whatever. And we don't have that in industry. There's look at about any product you buy today, you'll get this country of origin, which I said earlier is pretty much meaningless, because it could be domestic cotton made in China. Who knows?
Right, because there's so many different steps in it. That T-shirt goes so
Yes.
far around the world. So just
Right.
saying made in one place is not very meaningful.
So, and main thing is, I tell brands, you can tell me anything you want to. You can tell me it's fair labor. You can tell me it's organic cotton. You can tell me until you tell me where it's made and you give me those sources, give me that facility in Bangladesh or China or wherever you're getting it done. Until you give me where it's made and a contact at that facility, I just, and it happens all the time. These brands get busted because they say one thing and then the facts come out. It's not actually done the way they say it is. So, and again, I have no problem with the global economy. I just have a problem with people using it to maximize their bottom line and not basically be willing to share where it's actually done.
Yeah, yeah. I guess one other quick question for you, just as I'm listening to things that you're saying, it's a lot of this is so much of this is like such an uphill battle, right? Like there's so many kind of factors against what you're trying to do. Like, how do you stay hopeful or optimistic about the kind of the goal? Like, I know it's a journey, but like we want to get somewhere with this. Like, so how do you kind of stay motivated?
Oh my gosh, that's a hard one, because it is hard. You know, but I think we've just been on this journey for so long. We believe it's the right journey. It's just it's tough. I mean, we just I actually, and you probably know this as much as I do. There's been a lot of domestic apparel manufacturing that's gone out of business this year, and I don't know if it's all attributed to Temu, Shein, fast fashion, or what exactly is going on. So the industry is domestic apparel industry is a very tough spot. And, unfortunately, low price seems to be the one that's winning out. So, but it's just, to me, as I like to say, is at least I might not have quite as much money in the bank, but I'll be able to sleep at night knowing that I'm not abusing the people of the planet to make our products. So and I think our staff overall at TS Designs believes in that same journey too. And the other thing too is, I think what keeps us going is, the customers that we do work for, and how appreciative they are when the work that we're doing is very gratifying. And we just got to have people like you that are sharing information, and at least get people thinking about it becomes talking about it, and talking about it becomes change.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, thank you so much, Eric. This was a great conversation. Once again, for ASI Media, I'm Teresa Hagel, and this was Promo Insiders.
Thank you very much, and have a great rest of the day.